Welcome to today's episode of the Working Wisdom podcast series, brought to you by the C.T. Bauer College of Business at the University of Houston. We're having a conversation about work-life balance, how to navigate and overcome challenges within your career, and how to make business more accommodating to a diverse workforce.
Welcome to the Working Wisdom podcast here at the C.T. Bauer College of Business. My name is Amanda Sebesta, and I'm the communications manager here for the Bauer College Office of Communications. And I'm hosting today and talking to Mahek Hooda, a May 2018 BBA graduate who is now serving as a global supply chain planner for the Xbox line at Microsoft. And we're going to be talking to her today about global supply chain and her life and just her experiences. So Mahek, thank you so much for joining us today.
Hi Amanda, thanks so much for having me. This is super exciting. I've listened to this podcast like a bunch of times, and it's an honor to be here.
Great. Well, it's an honor to have you. So Mahek, let's just start out by having you introduce yourself and tell listeners what you do for a living.
So my name is Mahek Hooda. I graduated from the Bauer College of Business in May of 2018 with a double major of supply chain management and information systems. And after I graduated, I got the opportunity to come to Microsoft and be a part of their really cool, interesting, complex supply chain. And I joined the Xbox line of business as a global supply chain planner. And so I just passed my 3 months at Microsoft, so the first 90 days, and it's been really interesting. It's been such a learning experience. I moved to Seattle, so left Houston, moved to the West Coast, and I'm in what they say is like the tech bubble, and it's been really exciting. I've loved the opportunity to just be outdoors and to go hiking and to meet all these cool new people and to really be immersed in such an interesting, fast-paced environment. So it's been really cool so far.
Yeah, and I honestly would not associate Microsoft and tech bubble with getting to be outdoors and out in nature. So that's an interesting thing right there.
Yeah, so Washington or Seattle is actually super, super green, and there's a lot of scenery. I've done about like 20 hikes since I've been here.
Oh, wow.
And it's awesome. It's a really big shift from Houston. I think people here are like way more health conscious, and the go-to activity is either hiking or in the winter skiing. So I'll be getting into that, and there's just so much to do. So it's been really, really awesome.
Wow, that's cool. So, Mahek, you're a very recent college grad, like we talked about, and I think you're a great example for anyone who might be worried about, and I have, quotes, wasting their time on a degree. There was air quotes on that. And so your degree in time as a Bauer student seems to translate nicely into your current career. So can you tell us how you were immediately able to jump into the workforce upon graduation?
My biggest piece of advice to any student is to really get immersed into the education that you get at Bauer. It's quite different in my experience. Everyone says that once you graduate, you learn a lot of things on the job, and I really do think that's true. But everything that I learned in my supply chain courses is absolutely applicable, and so I'm able to pull back on a lot of things that I learned. And so my biggest piece of advice to students is to really take the opportunity to learn the material, because I think Bauer is pretty up to date with the content that they're teaching, and they're pretty active with what's going on in the industry. So really being immersed in that. And then another thing that I took advantage of was just getting internships. And the way that started was sophomore year, just being very active in the different student orgs, trying to get plugged into different leadership opportunities, which Bauer does great at providing for their students, and really getting my feet wet and just experiencing what it's like to work with different people. And that led to just like a series of different internships, which are, I think, the pinnacle to set you up to success to going into corporate, because it's your introduction to corporate America. And I think internships give you a lot of skills in terms of how to be professional, how to interact with working professionals, how to dress appropriately, how to ask the right questions, how to present in front of senior leadership. And I think those are the core skills that internships provide you. So if you're really able to take whatever you learn in your internship and you're really able to combine that with the learning that your degree teaches you, I absolutely think that you'll be set up for success. And just like other pieces of advice, which I didn't realize when I was a student, is the ability to problem solve. I think a lot of people kind of negate that when they're a student. When you have a problem in a class that you can't figure out, a lot of students immediately run to go talk to a professor or a TA without really trying to dissect the problem and think about how they would solve it, and they get it answered for them. And I think that's a big adjustment from college to the working world, is that you're really expected to put on a thinking hat to figure out how to best navigate a situation with a lot of ambiguity and then come up with a potential solution, and then obviously run it by your manager or your mentor. But they want to see that thought. They want to see that initiative. And so kind of as you're going through school and you're going through your classes, think about that. Really try to solve an issue or take a stab at it before you try to get help from a professor or a TA. So that would be a really great thing. If you can start doing that now, that'll really set you up for that problem-solving mindset. And then my last piece of advice is, we all do group projects, and you're working with teams as an officer. And so my last piece of advice would be to always focus on the solution and not pointing fingers at how you got the problem. I think that it comes with maturity, and as you get more exposure with working with people, definitely putting on that mindset of like, okay, how do we drive towards a solution and how do we pick up and move forward from here as one team? I think if you're able to keep those two things in mind as you go through your journey in undergrad, you will be really, really set well for the working world.
So, Mahek, you studied management information systems and supply chain management while you were at Bauer. How did you end up here as a business professional in the social and digital space?
Yeah, so I purposely did MIS because I wanted to position myself to be in tech, and then my core passion was always supply chain. So I just combined those two degrees together and sought out experiences that would set me up for a job at a company like Microsoft, and I think that's really how it works. I think having the MIS background was a huge leverage. Being able to understand the system side of things, being able to code a little bit, being able to just look at technology in a different angle really set me up to be a good supply chain professional. So I think that those two together really, really pushed me. And then, I as I said, I studied abroad. So I went to Israel and I did a program in tech, and it was in big data. So I was able to kind of pull in a lot of those things that I learned abroad as well. And I think, Microsoft is a huge proponent of like just learning and continuous education. So I have access to a library at Microsoft where I'm able to read all these books and LinkedIn Learning. So I'm continuously just trying to improve my knowledge on different supply chain areas and different areas that are just huge in tech right now, like AI and machine learning and deep learning. Not that I'm like learning each individual piece, but I'm just trying to get an overall understanding of like what's playing out in tech right now, what's going on with Azure, what's going on with different parts of the business. So that's really cool. And then, just in terms of the Microsoft culture, I think it's always about one Microsoft and fail fast. So I think they really empower you to own your products, to really empower you to own everything you do. And if you make a mistake, you just learn quickly and drive towards a solution. And it's always one team. You're always supported with one team, and nobody points fingers. And that's really why I reiterated, when you're a student, you want to have those things at the back of your mind. You want to be focused on solutions, and you want to be focused on how to learn quickly and make mistakes and deep diving yourself and trying to attack problems and kind of do a lot of the due diligence before you seek out for help. And so I think those are the two things that I've really instilled in myself since I've been here. And yeah, it's been really good.
Great. And so Mahek, as a student, and you've kind of touched on a little bit of it, but I'm going to go into like your full student history. And here we go. You were very active and involved in the college and the university. You were involved in student organizations. You participated in the Harvard Business School Summer Venture and Management Program. You were a UH Diversity Consortium leader, and you consulted for the SURE program. And in addition to all of this, you were also involved in activities off campus, volunteering abroad in Kenya and Guatemala, and leading a Young Women Leadership Series at the Houston Turkish Center. Like, I'm literally exhausted reading all of those things that you just did. And to know that you did all of that while being a great student and incredibly inspiring and motivating, can you talk to us about some of these different opportunities outside the classroom and how they shaped your current perspective?
Everything that I've participated in has really led me to where I am today. And I think the biggest thing that I would tell students is try to figure out what your passion is and then create something. I think nowadays it's not just being a leader or an officer. I think those are great places to start. And if you're able to innovate in those roles, that's also amazing. But what are you really passionate about? And can you create something from that? So a lot of the things that you mentioned were self-started. You know, I went to Kenya and I just volunteered myself because I wanted to have an impact on the community while I was there. And I went to different schools and I, donated supplies, and that was a self-started initiative. Another thing that I did was I started a mini project where me and one of my friends in engineering, we fed over 100 meals to the Houston homeless during winter break. And I just didn't want to be bored during winter break. I've always been passionate about helping out the community and being really plugged into the community, especially one that's in your backyard. So I started this program and I was able to leverage my supply chain skills because I had to, logistically figure out how to get 100 meals out and how to procure these, bread and all these materials that go into making these meals, how to do that most efficiently. And then we designed a website, right, to get our word out. So I utilized everything I learned in my classes and just went and created something. That's the biggest advice I can tell students, is that you have so much wealth of knowledge that you walk out of in college, and the biggest leverage you have is your network and your ability to create things with the time that you have. I think when you start a 9-to-5 job, it's really hard to sometimes go off and be creative and create something with different people, but you have that leverage as a student. Utilize all the people that are so smart that are in your classes, and go and figure out what is a problem that you're passionate about and go and tackle it, and utilize everything that you've learned in your classes. Utilize all those technical skills you've learned in your different classes and put that to use. And I promise you'll be so much more invigorated about being a learning student. Like, utilize your student network, get advice from your professors, and go create something. Because right now, that entrepreneurial and innovation mindset is key, especially if you want to work for any tech company or a company that's looking to just make changes in the world and just like add a splash of color into areas that are really dull. And so I would say just go create something. Go create something.
I like it. So Mahek, for listeners who might be in the same place you were a few months ago, preparing to transition from college life to the workforce and, the real world, I use those air quotes again, what advice or words of wisdom can you share? Any critical tips that you wouldn't have known at the time but realize now were especially important?
I would say read up on personal finance. You don't want to go into a job that's paying you a good amount of money, and then not know what to do with that money. So try to spend, your last semester or whatever free time you have reading up on what is a 401k, how to select the best health insurance, how to save up money if you have an HSA, how to invest in stocks if your company offers them, how to just prepare for those 6 to 8 months of living expenses that you need to have. And something that I really took advantage of is U of H actually has financial advisors that you can go meet with for free as a student. So I set up like 4 appointments with a lady, and she was super helpful. I created a budget. Have a budget for when you graduate, and have it pegged for all scenarios. If you get a job, if you don't get a job, if you already know how much you're going to be making, have a financial plan and understand the nuances of all of those things, because once you jump into the working world, things are moving so quickly. You have to understand your role. You may be in a new city. You're trying to build a social life. So try to understand your finances and your personal finances and how you want to tackle that way before. The second thing I would say is, try to figure out a routine to stay healthy. I think as a student, you have way more autonomy over your schedule, and you can go to the gym at noon, and then the next day you can go to the gym at like 8 p.m. But when you're working and you're sitting at a desk all day, it's way more routine. So you have to figure out a way to be excited about working out and be able to convince yourself to go work out every day. So figure out, what it is that'll get you to the gym so you can stay healthy, because ultimately performing well in life is how you feel, how good your body feels. So learning that as a student, I know as a student, like, you have more time. So figure out, like, how do you like to work out and all of those things. And then the third thing I would say is develop like good mentors. When you're a student, a lot of your mentors may be people who are giving you advice on how to get an internship or how to get a full-time job. Try to kind of gear the conversations now on how to succeed in the working world, how to, perform really well at work, how to ask good questions, how to deal with ambiguous projects, and try to scout out mentors that can help you deal with this new life that you're about to walk into. I mean, I have mentors that I literally call almost every other weekend, and I'm like, yeah, this is a situation I'm in. This is how I thought about kind of handling it. What's your advice? And really just like try to figure out who can be your support system. It can be people in the company you're working with. It can be people outside of the company. Just have a good backbone of people that you look up to. Have someone who's early in career, have someone who's maybe mid or late career that can really give you that longer term perspective. But try to find good mentors that can help you handle and navigate the corporate world.
Great. I think that's all great advice, Mahek. And so right now we're going to take a quick break to hear a word from our sponsors, and when we get back, we will continue our conversation with Mahek Hooda. Join the conversation. Bauer College's Working Families Initiative is bridging the gap between industry and academia to create a conversation on how organizations can make the workplace more family-friendly. We're talking about flexibility, maternity and paternity leave, and career transitions. For more information about the Working Families Initiative at Bauer College, including upcoming events, visit bauer.uh.edu/workingfamilies. And we're back. Thank you for joining us here on the Working Wisdom podcast here from the CT Bauer College of Business. This is Amanda Sebesta speaking with Mahek Hooda, the Global Supply Chain Planner for the Xbox line at Microsoft. Mahek, I'm going to shift gears on us a little bit, but I want to talk a bit about you, not in the current, but a little bit about your childhood and what led you to this point. Tell us about where you're born, what your family's like, and how you ended up at Bauer College.
Yeah, so I have a pretty interesting story. So I was born in Nairobi, Kenya. So I was 8.5 years old. And then my family won the green card in a lottery. It was a diversity lottery where the U.S. was trying to get more immigrants in to increase diversity. So we won citizenship that way and then moved to the U.S. So when people ask me kind of like what motivated me so much in college, like why was I so involved, how did I figure out what I wanted to be passionate about, it all goes down to that initial childhood of mine, being brought up in, a developing country, seeing the problems that are going on in the world and how lucky I was to be in the U.S., being educated in the U.S. was super empowering. And I wanted to just take advantage of all the opportunities I got, but I also wanted to understand how to add myself and insert myself in solving some of these problems, even in a very small way. I mean, starting that mini project where we fed 100 people came from me seeing people not have food to eat, like throughout my childhood, going to school and walking on the road and seeing people not have food to eat. And then just choosing me to want to be passionate about helping the community and reading up on poverty and all of that. And that's why I was so passionate about SURE, because in the SURE program, you're able to utilize your classes, the knowledge that you learn in class and help the community in a very innovative way. So we learned a lot about socioeconomic status, just how to like microeconomies and how to kind of get out of the poverty cycle. That was something I was super interested in. So if that's something that you're interested in as well, and you want to be plugged in and help out in a social way, the SURE program was like pivotal in that. So I think it just came to like being born abroad, seeing so much hardship growing up from different people, and then getting an opportunity to come to one of the best countries in the world and have so many opportunities. I couldn't resist. I was like so excited of everything that you could do. I really felt like I could live out the American dream.
That's awesome, Mahek. And so when it came time for you to go to college and decide, the career path to pursue, what kinds of expectations did you feel as a woman, with your family's background, and how did all of these things shape you?
Yeah, so I mean, it's definitely hard being kind of from an Indian Muslim background to leave your family and to go like a 5-hour flight away to go work for a company. But I think my experience in college really empowered me to do so. U of H is one of the most diverse environments anyone can be a part of. So learning how to talk to different people, learning how to stand up and be an active participant in different projects and have my voice be heard, that was something that I learned throughout undergrad. And so it wasn't too big of a shift for me, because I went to a really diverse school to come to a company that is very fast-paced and but Microsoft is also pretty diverse. I mean, there's working on having more women, but I look at that as like super empowering. Like I get to be a part of that movement to bring more women in, but I feel comfortable because of my experience at U of H. I feel comfortable being around different people. I feel comfortable being an active participant because of how diverse undergrad was. So just soak yourself into that. I mean, the diversity program that I was a part of at U of H, I mean, all the different organizations, NABA, HBSA, ABSA, if you can just go insert yourself in a couple meetings, go to, a couple of their events and see what it feels like, then I think you'll be much more accustomed to working with different kinds of people and sometimes maybe being the only non-Hispanic in HBSA and seeing how that feels and being able to kind of cultivate a more welcoming environment. A lot of times I would go to all these organizations and I would be present, and it just took out the uncomfortable feeling out of it. And I started calling more of my friends to be in these orgs, and it just became way more welcoming and empowering to be that person that can bring people from different backgrounds in. So take advantage of these diversity student orgs and take advantage of just being a student in a very international city.
Most definitely. So, Mahek, in your current role, have you faced any stigma as, a young woman and a millennial in the workforce? And how do you overcome, doubters or the haters or people who just might not be willing to see the value you bring?
I think I haven't faced much in regards to women. Being a woman, I think that I'm lucky in that sense that I personally haven't faced that. I think the supply chain team at Microsoft does have a lot of women, but I do want to touch a little bit on the millennial piece of things. Coming out of college, there is a stigma of you being, a millennial and all of that, but I think what you can do to really prove your worth is to do your due diligence, before you go into a meeting. Read up on the agenda, go onto any documentation websites and see, are there past meeting minutes that you can read in? Before you go into a one-on-one with someone, ask a few people, hey, what are the key questions I should ask this individual? Really just put your due diligence and utilize people's time time effectively, and I think that's when your worth will show. That when you speak things, they're important things. When you add to a conversation, it's valuable things. So just do your due diligence, and then also don't be afraid to acknowledge the fact that, yes, I came out of college, and yes, this is new to me, and I want feedback. I want to grow. I want to be a better team player. Please let me know what I can do to improve myself. I think just having that vulnerability and acknowledging that, yeah, you are fresh out of college. You don't have a lot of work experience, but you're there and you're available for people to give you feedback, especially when you work with people in projects and stuff. I think those two key things. Do your due diligence. Make sure that you are asking the right questions. Make sure that you're plugging in and engaging with the right people, that you're utilizing your manager, that you're reading up on past documentation, and then saying like, hey, let me know if you have any feedback. You know, sometimes when I got on a call with, when I got on my calls with China, I would tell them like, hey, I'm brand new into this role. Like, please tell me how you want me to communicate with you so we can have a successful partnership. I want to be a better supply chain planner, and I would love your advice and feedback on how we can do that together. And they're so willing to help you even more. People are way more willing to bend for you and help you when they know that you acknowledge it. So I think it'd be those two things.
That's great. So, Mahek, how important is it for you to stay creative, even in a supply chain job? What inspires you? Any books, podcasts? I know you talked about some podcasts earlier, but blogs, anything like that?
Yeah, I really love podcasts. So I will pull up my phone right now and tell you some of my favorite podcasts, because they're just so engaging and they constantly keep you thinking about what's going on out there. So I really like Money Girl. That's given me a lot of perspective on how to be savvy with money. I really like the podcast We Study Billionaires, and they basically look at people who've reached billions in net value, and they talk about how that person cultivated their life to get there. I also really like Business Wars, which goes into comparing different brands and kind of like being able to understand how different brands set themselves up to be competitive. So they'll compare like Nike and Adidas, and they'll just like go into the nitty gritty of like how are they both still competitive with each other. I love Freakonomics, and just a few other things. And then I love listening to audiobooks. So a really good audiobook that I'm listening to right now is called Girl Wash Your Face.
Yes.
And it's basically I don't know if you read it. It's amazing. It just talks about it's okay to feel not beautiful sometimes. It's okay to be insecure. It's okay to feel those things, but how do you come out of that? How do you get yourself out of that, and how do you be the best version of yourself? And what I love about the book is it acknowledges those feelings, because life is not perfect. Not everything is great, and you don't feel beautiful and wonderful all the time, and that's fine. And she acknowledges that through so many stories, and she tells you how to get out of that and how to be like basically an awesome, badass woman. So that's a really good book. And then I guess being engaged in the Seattle community, there's, startups popping up left and right. There's co-working spaces. There's so many, forums and networking events where they talk about what's going on in cloud, where they talk about what's going on in the design community. So figuring out how to plug yourself into those things. Houston has a lot of it as well. I just tell students, like, take advantage of what U of H offers you, but take advantage of what Houston offers you. Take advantage of what's going on in your community. There's a ton of, Houston is also a really awesome startup scene. There's just a lot of different incubators and spaces that are popping up in Houston. So, try to get yourself plugged into those things and try to get those creative juices flowing. When you talk to your friends, instead of having more surface level conversation, ask them, hey, is there something that if you had all the money and power in the world to invent, what would it be? Instead of having more surface level conversation, try to pick people's brain and see, what do they think? Where is there space to improve? And then talk to their professors. Professors have such a huge network that if you want to get connected to someone or you want their input or advice on something, they will gladly give that to you.
That's great, Mahek. And, to kind of close this out, if our listeners are looking to, get in touch with you to learn more about your experience, where could they find you online?
Yeah, so please, 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 if you want to learn about Microsoft, if you're interested in learning about supply chain or MIS, or you just are looking for a mentor, trust me, I am looking for people to help out as well. I want to pass on all the help that people gave me, all the, time that people gave me. So please, message me on LinkedIn. It's just my first and last name. Message me and, let's get connected. I want to do everything I can to help out my alumni base, especially Bauer students. So anything I can do to help, if I can connect you to someone, if you're in Seattle and you want to grab lunch or coffee, anything.
Well, Mahek, that's so great. And, thank you so much for joining us today on the Working Wisdom podcast and, giving that advice to our listeners. And, best of luck to you in your role at Microsoft. Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you so much, Amanda. This was so great. And good luck to all of you students. I hope you have an awesome rest of your semester. Kill it during finals and just keep being inspired and keep reaching out and going for what you really want. Keep just failing quickly and then iterating and moving on. And I wish you all the best.
Thank you for listening to today's episode of the Working Wisdom podcast series from the CT Bauer College of Business, brought to you by the Working Families Initiative. The initiative aims to provide support and access for women in business school and the workforce, and to generate research that organizations can use to implement policies and standards to benefit a diverse workforce. For more information about Bauer College and this podcast series, visit www.bauer.uh.edu/podcast.